What happens when one of the world's largest car manufacturers and one of the most successful engine suppliers in Formula One history decides they'd quite like their own team again? Well, that depends, but of course if they're Honda, they'd start by quitting the exact sport they want to compete in. This is the story of Honda's aborted entry into Formula One in the 1990s. It's 1992, and whilst the Olympics was held at Barcelona, Microsoft released Windows 3.1 and the Conservative Party was re-elected once again in the UK. Honda engines had spent the last decade powering some of the most successful cars in Formula One history. Successful in the sporting sense at least, with 69 race wins and 5 world championships, but it's kind of painful seeing the former Honda-engined Williams team winning with Renault power. And they're not just winning either, they are dominant, and soon they were about to steal Ayrton Senna away from McLaren. Anyway, as a car manufacturer investing quite a lot of money in F1 engine development, it's fairly important that the board sees some benefit trickling down to their road cars. With McLaren and Honda on diverging paths, that wasn't happening as the bosses in Japan wanted, and so the plug was pulled. Ruthless. Flush with cash they're not spending on losing races in somebody else's cars, Honda decided to quietly start researching on how they should build an F1 car that meets their needs. And in late 1993, they wheeled out a naked carbon car called the RC100 for the press. The car wasn't exactly groundbreaking, but then it wasn't really supposed to be. The first car born out of a secret R&D project, things were taken quite conservatively, and it was fitted with the same V12 engine they supplied to McLaren in 1992, freeing up resources to develop the 6-speed semi-automatic transmission and the chassis in-house. This, they declared, showed the world that Honda was capable of designing and building an F1 car and running a team all on its own. With its car complete, it was sent off for the mandatory FIA crash testing, where it received a pass rating and was homologated ready for competition. Unfortunately, crashing cars heavily normally destroys them, so they had to build another, the RC101. With a viable car design, it's time for the RC101 to take to the track and prove its worth. Not wanting to be embarrassed or hampered by a potentially less than stellar debut, however, Honda recruited recently retired Japanese F1 driver Satoru Nakajima and go all secret squirrel on it, conducting everything behind closed doors. By late 1994, the car was ready for the public again, with Honda choosing to host the press at their famous Suzuka circuit. A third chassis, the RC101B, is apparently used for this test, but nobody's really sure at this point because there are so many names for the tub that even George Lucas couldn't have numbered them more effectively. By the end of the year, however, everything had gone quiet again, and the RC100, 101 and 101B was nowhere to be seen. The world was left to wonder what might have been, and Formula One continued in its own bubble. Until, that is,
5 years later.
So, having spent the last 5 years trying to design, engineer and produce an F1 car with an all-Japanese team, the management at Honda finally saw the light in 1998 and did what they probably should have done back at the start of it all: employ some experts from Europe. Not us though, because we're British and not technically European anymore. Guided by the well-respected designer Harvey Postlethwaite and race car manufacturer Dallara, the Honda RA099 turns out to be a pretty competitive first draft. It's simple, just like the RC100, but it's a platform for better things after preliminary tests at the Autodromo Riccardo Paletti. No idea where either, to be honest. Honda then recruited the underfunded but very highly rated Jos Verstappen to lead development of the car. In fact, so serious were the team's plans at this point that they'd already been granted an entry into the 2000 season by Mr. Eccleston.
Let's do this!
Under order from the big cheese himself, the factory was to repaint the cars from white and red to all white, so they looked more like the prototypes that they were supposed to be. By the time the Formula One group test came around at Jerez in January 1999, the Honda car was actually considered to be properly quick. So much so that rumours started to fly around that it was illegal. Despite the unsubstantiated claims, the Honda team took great delight in their car lapping faster than the new Supertech-powered BAR, both of which were largely designed and run by ex-Tyrrell staff. So, what happened next? Well, unfortunately the story doesn't have quite the happy, competitive ending it deserves, as the programme came under increasing scrutiny from both head office in Japan and of Honda of America. Postlethwaite did all he could to persuade his superiors to push on, even sending them a letter outlining how much success they'd had for such a young project. But it was to no avail. BAR had been courting Honda to supply them with engines in the future, and this represented a much smaller investment for them going forward. In April 1999, Postlethwaite tragically died of a heart attack whilst the team was testing at Barcelona, and soon after, the project was canned for good. In the end, the RA099 may not have raced, but it did just enough to convince Honda that a return to Formula One wasn't a completely terrible idea. From 2000, Honda took over the Mugen engine supply deal, and having operated as the de facto works team since 2003, Honda decided to buy out the team formerly known as BAR, at the start of the 2005 campaign. Sadly, after just 3 years in the sport, Honda pulled the plug again on the team at the end of 2008, this time because of the global financial crisis. With just one win under their belt, courtesy of Jenson Button in Hungary 2006, it seems rather ironic that all that American tobacco money ended up going up in smoke. But I hear you ask, what became of all of those prototypes? Well, the RC100, 101, 101B are apparently all lost to time, but Honda did wheel out a suspiciously similar car called the RC1.5 during the 2002 Honda Fun Day at the Twin Ring Motegi. Curiously, a previously unknown and completely different car also surfaced, labelled the RC2.0. Obviously, the engineers hadn't downed tools between 1994 and 1998. However, this has since disappeared from public view, so we'll never really know what lies beneath the bodywork. Unlike the RC chassis, Honda got quite far into the RA099 project before it was axed. 6 were actually commissioned in the end, with 4 complete cars built from those, and all now reside at Honda's official collections in Japan. And then there's the team that was Tyrrell, BAR, and finally Honda. After the Japanese marque quit the sport, Ross Brawn staged a management buyout, fitting a Mercedes engine into the chassis and naming the team after himself. Brawn GP promptly won the Drivers' and Constructors' World Championships on their first attempt in 2009 before selling out to Mercedes at the end of the season. And well, they've been pretty unstoppable ever since the start of the hybrid era in 2014. Ironic, isn't it? Thanks for watching, see you next time.